The road stretched out endlessly before her, an unbroken ribbon of asphalt cutting through the darkened landscape. April Weller had been driving for hours, pushing through exhaustion as she chased the horizon. Her relationship had ended in a mess of betrayal and heartbreak, leaving her with nothing but a packed car and a vague sense of direction. She told herself this road trip was about freedom, about starting fresh, about seeing every breathtaking landscape America had to offer. And she had seen some incredible sights: towering mountains, sprawling plains, oceans that stretched far beyond the eye could see. But tonight, all she wanted was sleep. Her mouth was dry, but she ignored it. She'd finished off the last of her water bottle some hours ago, meaning to stop for more, but it wasn't worth pulling over when she was this close to a place to rest. Somewhere along the back roads of Kentucky, located deep within a seemingly endless forest, she spotted a dimly lit motel sign flickering in the distance. The neon letters buzzed softly: Red Hollow Inn, vacancy. The town itself, Red Hollow, was barely more than a blip on the map. A single gas station, a diner, and a handful of houses scattered along the lonely road. April figured it was the kind of place truckers and travelers passed through, stopping only long enough to refuel and rest before moving on. Nothing about it screamed danger. When she pulled into the lot, the night was eerily silent. The motel itself looked clean enough, modest but well-maintained. The front office was bathed in warm yellow light, and through the glass window, she could see a woman standing behind the desk. April stretched her aching limbs as she stepped out of the car, locking the doors behind her. The scent of damp earth and pine filled the air as she crossed the lot, the gravel crunching softly under her boots. The woman behind the desk, a middle-aged lady with curled, honey-blonde hair and a warm smile, greeted her as soon as she entered. "Well, don't you look road-weary," she said in a gentle southern drawl. "Welcome to Red Hollow. Just passing through?" "Yeah," April replied, rubbing at her tired eyes. "Just needed a place to crash for the night." "Well, you've come to the right spot," the woman beamed. "We pride ourselves on hospitality here." There was something a little too enthusiastic about the way she said it. Too eager. April brushed it off. Small towns were like that, right? Everyone overly friendly, always looking to make visitors feel welcome. "You're in luck," the woman continued. "I'll put you in room 7. It's got the best mattress in the house. I promise you that." She slid the key across the counter. April took it, offering a tired smile. "Thanks, I appreciate it." The woman hesitated for just a second, then added, "If you need anything at all, don't be afraid to ask. We take care of our guests here." April nodded. "I'll keep that in mind." As she stepped back out into the night, she noticed 2 men standing near the gas station across the road. They were both watching her, not in a leering way, but with an odd, unwavering focus, like they were assessing her. She looked away, quickening her pace toward her room. Inside, the motel room was surprisingly cozy. Not luxurious by any means, but clean. A queen-size bed with fresh white linens, a wooden dresser, a small television mounted to the wall. April exhaled, relieved to finally be off the road. She flicked on the bedside lamp and opened the mini fridge, grabbing one of the complimentary bottled waters inside. She twisted off the cap and took a few absent-minded gulps, barely paying attention as she kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the bed. The last thing she did before sleep took her was reach for the lamp, her fingers sluggish, her eyelids heavy. She never noticed the shadow lingering outside her window. Something was wrong. April's limbs felt heavy, her head clouded in a thick fog. She tried to open her eyes, but found them slow to obey, like she was dragging herself out of a deep, unnatural sleep. Her fingers twitched, pressing against something firm. Not a mattress. Stone. Cold. Unforgiving. Panic stirred in her chest. She forced her eyes open, and the breath fled from her lungs. She was no longer in the motel. She was on a massive stone slab in the middle of a dense forest, the towering trees casting eerie shadows under the glow of flickering torches. Figures in black robes surrounded her, their faces obscured by deep hoods. They were chanting low, unfamiliar words that sent a sickening chill crawling down her spine. She fought to remain still. They thought she was unconscious. If she moved too soon, she'd lose whatever slim chance she had to escape. She could barely process what was happening. How had she gotten here? The last thing she remembered was lying down in the motel, her body succumbing to exhaustion. They must have drugged her. The cultists murmured in a language she didn't understand, their voices rising and falling in a rhythmic, almost hypnotic cadence. Amidst the foreign words, one name stood out. Dogman. They repeated it over and over again, like a prayer. April's mind raced. Dogman. What the hell was Dogman? She had never heard of it before. Was it some kind of demon? Satan, even? But these people, these cultists, weren't just chanting this for no reason. Whatever Dogman is, they worshipped it, and they were about to offer her as a sacrifice. One of the hooded figures stepped closer, reaching for her wrist. They were tying her down. The first rope tightened around her arm. As the cultist moved to secure her second wrist, she saw an opening. With all the force she could muster, she kicked out, her foot slamming into the nearest torch. The wooden handle went flying. The torch hit the ground. And in that moment, everything changed. The firelight illuminated something lurking just beyond the edge of the trees. Something massive. It stood upright on bent, unnatural legs, its fur matted and dark as night. A grotesque, elongated snout filled with jagged teeth. Dogman. It had been watching them. For a heartbeat, the entire forest fell into an eerie silence. Then one of the cultists, with panic in his voice, turned to April and said, "You disrupted the ceremony. Our savior won't like this." He was right. The monster lunged. The cultist closest to it barely had time to scream before it was on him, claws raking through flesh like paper. Chaos erupted. Screams tore through the night as cultists fled in every direction, dropping their torches in a blind panic. Some tripped, falling over each other in their desperate attempt to escape. Others weren't so lucky. The Dogman moved too fast, too efficiently, its snarls mingling with the horrifying crunch of breaking bone. April wasted no time. She twisted against the ropes, using the chaos to her advantage. One of the torches had landed close enough to illuminate a sharp rock at the edge of the slab. She grasped it, sawing at the bindings. The Dogman was still ripping through the cultists, its snarling breath hot and thick with the scent of fresh blood. April freed her wrist, and she ran. She ran through the trees, her body fueled by sheer survival instinct. Branches scratched at her arms and face, but she didn't stop. Behind her, the screams were dwindling, replaced by wet, guttural sounds. Sounds she didn't want to interpret. She had to get out. She ran with everything she had. Then, out of pure luck, she stumbled upon a road. April burst onto the asphalt, nearly collapsing onto the pavement. A pair of headlights rounded the bend. She stumbled forward, waving frantically. "Please, help me." The car, a dusty sedan, skidded to a stop. The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, rolled down his window. "Jesus, miss, are you okay?" April sobbed. "Please, just take me to the police." There's a cult. The woman in the passenger seat reached out, squeezing her hand. Oh, sweetheart, you poor thing. Get in. We'll take you right there. April exhaled a shaky breath as she climbed into the back seat. She felt safe. The sound of the car's engine was the only sound as April sat slumped in the back seat, her heart still hammering from the adrenaline crash. She could barely process what had happened. Her mind still replayed the horror in the woods, the cultists' chants, the dogman snarls, the screams, the smell of burning wood and blood. The couple in the front exchanged glances. "You're safe now, sweetheart," the woman reassured, her voice syrupy sweet. "We'll get you to the police. Don't you worry." April tried to slow her breathing, pressing a shaking hand to her forehead. I don't even know where I am," she admitted, her voice hoarse. "I was just passing through, and then they drugged me or something. I woke up in the woods, tied up. She couldn't finish. The man sighed, shaking his head. "Damn shame. Some bad people in these parts." April nodded weakly, her exhaustion creeping in again. She wanted to keep talking, but her body felt like lead, her mind clouded. She felt the woman's hand on her shoulder. "You've been through so much," she said soothingly. "Just rest for a bit, honey. We'll wake you when we get there." April closed her eyes. She was about to go to sleep in hopes of waking up at the police station. But something in her gut was telling her, "You're not safe. You need to get out of this vehicle. Now." She slowly opened her eyes, but before she had a chance to act on this feeling, the woman in the passenger seat swung a blunt object across April's temple, knocking her unconscious. She woke to pain, a sharp, splitting agony in her skull, radiating through her entire body. April's eyes fluttered open, and she immediately wished they hadn't. She was back. The stone slab beneath her felt even colder now, its rough surface digging into her skin. Her arms and legs were completely bound, tight this time. Fire crackled nearby, casting shadows against the trees. The air reeked of burning wood, scorched flesh, and something worse. The couple stood over her. Their smiles were gone. Instead, their faces were blank, their eyes dark pools of devotion. Behind them, the remaining cultists gathered in a semicircle, their robes stained with dirt and blood. Some clutched makeshift bandages to their wounds. Others merely stared, hollow-eyed, their faces twisted with a mixture of fear and reverence. They had barely survived the massacre, and now they were making sure their god got its due. The man knelt beside her, his breath warm against her cheek. "You ran," he murmured. "That was real foolish, girl." April's throat was raw, but she forced out the only word she could muster. "Why?" The woman answered, brushing hair from April's forehead like a mother tending to a sick child. "We serve him," she whispered, eyes shining. "The Great One, the first hunter. He's been here long before any of us. He is the blood and the shadow in these woods. And we, his faithful, must feed him." April's breath hitched. "We used to only offer drifters, hitchhikers, the ones nobody would miss. But lately, the hunger's been growing. He needs more. And when we saw you at the motel, all alone, well," she smiled, "we knew it was meant to be." April thrashed against the bindings, but they didn't budge. The cultists resumed their chant, their voices a haunting murmur in the night. "Dogman," over and over. "Dogman, Dogman, Dogman." Something rustled in the trees. A deep, monstrous growl rumbled through the clearing. April's blood turned to ice. The fire's glow flickered, and out of the darkness, it stepped. The Dogman. It was even worse in the full light. 7 feet of muscle, its fur matted with dried blood. Its limbs were long, tipped with claws that glistened in the firelight. Its mouth curled into a sick parody of a grin, its fangs bared, saliva dripping from its maw. The cultists dropped to their knees. One by one, they pressed their foreheads to the dirt, murmuring their worship. The couple stepped back, hands clasped together in silent devotion. April was left alone, tied down, helpless. The Dogman's eyes locked onto her. It cocked its head, sniffing the air. April's body began shaking violently in fear, her breathing heavy. The beast took a step forward. It inhaled deeply, nostrils flaring. It was savoring the moment. April began to whimper. She wanted to scream, to do anything, but all she could do was stare as the creature loomed over her. It tilted its head back and howled. A long, ear-piercing wail that sent shudders through every cultist present. Then it struck. Its jaws latched onto her shoulder first. Pain exploded through April's body as teeth sank into flesh. Her scream tore through the night, like a young calf getting ripped apart by a grizzly bear. The sound was disturbing. The cultists never moved. The Dogman ripped back, tearing a chunk free. April's vision was beginning to blur, pain consuming her. She barely registered the next bite. Her stomach, her ribs, her thighs. Her blood soaked the stone, pooling beneath her. Darkness crept at the edges of her vision. Through the haze, she saw the couple. Smiling, she saw the remaining cultists. Bowing, and she saw the Dogman. Its fur slick with her blood, its eyes glowing with something almost like satisfaction. April Weller had wanted to see America. She had wanted to make memories, and she had, but not the kind she had hoped for, not the kind she would survive. The last thing she heard before the darkness claimed her was the chanting. Dogman, 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 and the sound of flesh tearing. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to Descent into the Unknown.